feeling that I'd never had before. And I've heard it said a million times, all of those things that happened, all those concerns and worries and fears just fell away. And, I've thought about that a lot. And there's a, let's just say, a speaker that, not in the program, who has this theory that, we constantly move about in different, vibrational levels. And those vibrational levels are different emotions. Like the scale kind of goes shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, courage, willingness, acceptance, love, peace. And what his theory of what happens when I drink is all of those all those ones below courage get deadened, they get numbed. So I'm allowed to feel what it's like just to live in the world of those upper vibrational states. And that's what I felt. And the problem is that it's not a true state. It's a false spiritual state. And so I have to continue to drink in order to try to find that place. And when I drank, it changed. When I drank, I liked the effect. And the effect was everything was much better. And I couldn't imagine anything I could do that wouldn't be better if I wasn't drunk. I remember thinking when I had to get sober, I really still wish I could drink because I just stay drunk all the time. And, there's a problem there. When I drank, and I think Clancy talks about there's a change of perception. And that's exactly what happened. Everything changed because the point I know is that if you felt the way I felt when I drank, I am sure you would drink. And I didn't understand why everyone didn't want to drink like I drank because, yeah, you took your lumps and there were some few bad things and such, but to be able to get that feeling was all I was really interested in. I wanted that feeling more than anything. And so I continued drinking, but didn't really wind up in much trouble. I had set my sights on, one of those hobbling dependencies, which is the approval of others and the respect of others. And so I had done well in science and I decided, I think I want to be a doctor. And so I went to college and I had to straighten up because I'd gotten too wild in high school. So I went to a Christian college. It's here. I don't want to say the name, so we'll just call it maybe Lip Brush. We'll just say it that way. And it's a university that is of the denomination that I'm a member of, or was. And I thought this is going to straighten me out because that was always it. I was going to have a way and something was going to happen. And then I was going to get struck sober. I was going to be able to stay and things were going to be like the way I wanted them. And so going to this straight school where nobody drinks, where I was actually running a risk of being put on probation and kicked out and losing all my hopes and dreams if I drank, would surely be enough to keep me from drinking. Not so much. I just changed the rules. And so we figured a way to move off campus so I could drink like I wanted to drink because I'm an alcoholic and I'm going to drink. And I had wonderful experiences at college and still was able to do well, and was able to go to medical school. And when I was in medical school, it was play hard and drink hard. And I saw no problem with that. And I was able to maintain and get to the goal, which is become the person that I knew I needed to be to make it, to win, to do what I needed to do, that everything had taught me was needed to be successful, because that was what one of the goals I was told and saw and believed was important. And so I went to medical school, and towards the end of medical school, I met my wife, and we started residency. And during residency, I didn't really drink much. It was just too hard. It was too busy. Residencies just, can be really intense. But, there were times where I found time definitely to drink. But, after we moved to Tennessee, I loved it here when I went to school, and I wanted to come back. And my wife loved it here. So we moved back here. And, I started working the emergency room. And, it's funny how you fool yourself. I would have told you I worked the emergency room for the excitement and the in and out and the way it's fast moving, and I have to be at my best. But the reality of it is, when I worked the emergency room, I could drink like I wanted to. I wasn't on call. You work a set number of hours and you're off a set number of hours. That was, that's when I'm honest, that's what I was doing. And it worked. I was able to drink like I wanted to, but my drinking was continually getting worse. And my drinking was starting to be a real, my sponsor is Steve Lee. And in fact, I was talking the other day, and I'm his oldest sponsor, not in age, but in terms of continuous sobriety with him. And he gives the example, and I'm sure he got it from someone, but I like Wheel of Fortune. My wife watches that every night. And, there's the 600 squares, and there's the 800, and they get smaller. And then there's that little $1 million sliver, big lose a turn. Well, for me, drinking was spinning that wheel, and I would spin that wheel. And when I first started drinking, it landed on those really big spaces that I wanted, which were like pick up the girl, have an amazing experience, meet new people, all of these things that I loved. But slowly somebody, and there were little slivers. The little $1 million sliver is DWI and, humiliation and shame. And somebody kept switching them over the years. And I started getting littler and littler. They started flipping on me, and the humiliation, the shame, and the degradation, and all of those things that come with my alcoholism kept getting bigger and bigger. And those moments of joy and happiness became the $1 million sliver. But the reason I'm an alcoholic, and I know I'm an alcoholic, is I was just as likely to spin that wheel, whether those were big ones or little ones, because I was chasing that feeling that I got that first time I drank, that liberation from the lower self and that escalation that I felt. And it wasn't happening like that anymore, and I was losing my control. And I always remember my wife said, Mike, you're a really funny guy, and you're so entertaining, and everybody loves you to a point. And then you just start drinking, or then you just keep drinking, and you keep getting drunk, and you start getting ugly, and it gets bad. And why won't we just stop when you hit that point? And I said, you're exactly right. You just tell me when I hit that point, and I'm going to stop. Thank you for clearing this up for me. And so, of course, we're at the party. I'm wheeling, dealing, joking, laughing. And she comes over and she nudges me. Okay, it's time. The time is here. And I'm like, gotcha. So that means I slip into stealth secret drinking mode because I'm an alcoholic. And, it took a long time for her to realize that, gosh, he decompensated pretty quickly when he stopped drinking, but maybe he didn't stop drinking. So I knew then that there was a problem, because as the book says, I was not enjoying and controlling my drinking. When I was enjoying it, I wasn't controlling it. And when I was controlling it, I wasn't enjoying it. And so I didn't know what to do. And, I held on to, doctors, our self-worth is so sadly tied up into the time and effort and creation. And so and it's true with most people, any of their jobs, that's the last thing to go. So it hadn't started affecting my work yet, but it was starting to, days I was going in, and boy, I think I smelled pretty bad. And so I, I started getting worried, and my wife started getting worried, but my wife started saying, okay, let's have that talk. And I'd wake up and the four horsemen were circling around my head. And I would say, oh, you don't understand. If I go to treatment, then I guess I could do that. But if I do, then I'm not going to be able to work for probably 3 or 4 months, and we won't have any money, and everything will, but if you want me to, so I once again manipulated and used the people that love me to get the results that I wanted. And so that was to keep drinking. And finally, I committed an atrocious act. And what was fascinating to me is the more atrocious the act, in some way, there was a secret part of me that was happy because, oh my God, this is horrible. Surely I will not drink again after this type of humiliation and degradation. And, as they say in airplanes, stop calling me Shirley, because I would. And what I realize now is there was absolutely nothing that could have happened to me that in and of itself would have been enough to get me to stop drinking. So my wife put down the ultimatum: if you drink again, I'm leaving. So that's it. Finally, game over. I know what I have to do. This is the thing I fear most, is losing my family. And so this is the challenge I needed to become and have that willpower that I do not have to be able to beat alcohol. And I didn't have it. And I never will have it, thank goodness. But I thought I did, and I thought that would be enough. And so it talks about even weeks after that situation, we forget the shame, the demoralization. And in a month, I was literally thinking, how dare she force me to drink secretly? How dare she? This is her fault that I'm having to sneak. At the end, my drink was a diet root beer, A&W diet root beer, and pure grain alcohol. Because when I got to the end, the nuance of the onophile and the fine nuques and the wonderful bouquets and the aftertaste and the nose of it's gone. It's all about the buzz, baby. It's all about, I want what I want when I want it. And I really don't have much time. Diet root beer, you ask? Because my wife hated diet root beer. So I had a less likely chance of her sipping it and then finding me. Although she thought it was strange how I would usually wind up more debilitated. And my wife drinks and has no problem with it, but I seem to be doing worse. And I wasn't even drinking, supposedly. So this is when I hit the rough, when things went completely south. My wife said, that's it, I'm done. And I realized, I've got to do something. And so what I decided to do was to go to AA. I had a friend who I know is AA, and I'm a bit of a doctor who's a freak in that I liked it. I went to AA and I started getting sober. And actually I was sober about 2 years. And then this other doctor said, now, now where's your, with caduceus? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the thing you have to go to, because, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And so he said, oh, well, we require recovering alcoholic doctors to be monitored to a certain degree. So I started going and I loved it. And everybody there hated me because they'd been drugged, kicking and screaming into recovery. And I loved it. I loved people sharing. I loved hearing people talk from the heart. I loved my sponsor. I loved doing those things, and I loved feeling better. And so it wasn't a problem for me getting sober. And so I continued to do what was asked of me, and I try to always do what I think is what I would want done to me. I mean, it isn't any simpler than that. I mean, it's a pretty simple rule, and it's an old one, but I have to deal with the fact that, I am an alcoholic, and um, an alcoholic, I drink, and I drink for the effect, and I know it changed my perception. And so I have to find a way to feel the way that I felt when I was drinking, or I will go back to drinking. And by working the steps and by growing in this program, I've been able to find a way to do that. Um, it talks about the ever dependent spiritual growth. And that's, to me, what's necessary for hitting the point of emotional sobriety, of the things that he talked about. And to me, I think there's two sentences here that sum up everything to me, which is, let us, with God's help, continually surrender these hobbling demands. Then we can be set free to live and to love. And we may then be able to gain emotional sobriety. So to me, and in my sobriety and in my spiritual growth, it's about surrender. And it's always about surrender. And spiritual growth is not about growing at all. It's actually about releasing. It's about releasing. It's about letting go. It's stripping to the core. Because my belief is, I am a spiritual being having a human experience, and that spiritual being is perfect. It's just, it's been misshapen and misformed and been mistrained, and until I wound up to where it was. And now I'm trying to get back there. I'm trying to take away those levels that interfere, because my original self is in connection with God. I mean, I think it is critical that God is everything or God is nothing. And that is the basis for everything, because if God is not everything, and he's nothing, then I'm everything. And that's where I lived my life when I was drinking. And most of the time now is no God, all me, or all God, no me. And I'm not very often there. And so I am trying to find ways to be able to relieve myself of the bondage of self, so that I can have that freedom to be able to have that relationship with my higher power. And, Young said a couple things that I like. Number one, he said, alcoholics have an exaggerated longing for God. And I think that's true. We really do. I think that's why we different, is that we knew there's something else out there. We didn't know what it was, but we found it accidentally in alcohol. But it wasn't the real deal. It threw us off the trail. And now we're freed from that, and we're on the right trail in terms of trying to find that path to what we want, or what I should say I want, which is a relationship with my higher power that will bring me undisturbedness. Sandy Beach talked a lot about undisturbedness. And that's what I want. I just want to be undisturbed. And I have to look at the parameters of how I live my life and where I live my life, these dependencies that he talks about. And how did I get here? And the way I got here is because, they put me in a world that gave me an ego. Egos are critical for separation of boundaries against the world. So you have boundaries, and those babies who don't form egos are far down on the autistic spectrum. It's really pitiful. But I form my ego. The problem comes that through my socialization and training and experiences, this ego became me, or became what I thought was me. And it took over the role of making sure not only to defend the borders, but to make sure I was happy. And how was I going to be happy? By the things I'd been taught, which is, if I make enough money, if I get enough things, if things work out in terms of who likes me and respect, and if I drive the right car, then I will be happy. And this thing that I'm truly looking for, that God hole, will be filled. And our capitalistic society is built on that. It's selling the cars and selling, which is fine. I'm not shorting it. I'm just saying this is how I wound up where I am, because I bought that. And so my ego was put in complete control of getting me there. But the stress and the problems and the conflict of me trying to get what I thought I needed to be happy, and stepping on the toes of the other people who thought they needed, what you need to get happy, it wasn't going to work. And the big book talks about that conflict that comes when I'm trying to find whatever and get whatever I can, the ego tells me. And so that doesn't work to me. Emotional sobriety requires that I take a different path, that I have to look at it a different way, because, I think it's kind of like what Oscar Wilde said, which is, there's only one thing worse than not getting everything you want, and that is getting everything you want. And I truly believe that, because the people who are taking the long dive off the top of the building are most and many times people who've had everything. So if that were true, if my parameters of, if I do these things, I'm going to be given happy, and I like to think of it as happy ever after, and that's the saddest delusion of all. And they lived happily ever after. Okay, let's read that to kids over and over again. And so I bought into that, and I'm trying to find my happily ever after, and it didn't happen. And it was not as bad in some ways when I was drinking, but when I'm sober and I'm still trying to find my happily ever after, and I'm just getting more frustrated and more angry and more depressed, I realize I have to change the parameters completely. And that is me getting what I want and searching for what I want and listening to what my ego tells me and believing what my ego and my mind, which is, being utilized by my ego, because my ego is really just a conglomeration of thoughts that I have, that I tell myself, this is me, but it isn't me. And that's the first illusion I had to give up, which is that I am a doctor. I am a 59-year-old male. I am all of these things that I've constructed, because none of those things are really me. These are things that I think, these are things that I construct. And so I have to try to find out, who am I? And my journey has taken me to the place that I am not those things. I am the consciousness that is the watcher of those things. I'm not going to get earthy crunchy or too much. I'm just going to tell you what I've learned. And the reality for me is, when I meditate so I can find a seat outside of my thoughts and outside of my ego and outside of my mind, so I can watch them, because they are screwed up. And the more time I have to watch my thoughts and mind, the more I realize why I did the things I do. And I also learn why you do the things you do, because we're all the same. And we're working off of this information that is truly misinformation. And so I think there is another way to do it. And for me, that is to try to understand and realize that, I'm not my thoughts, and I don't have to listen to my thoughts. And I don't have to be in the God is nothing category. I can try to move towards the God is everything. And the way I can do that is trying to get out of myself a little bit. And the best way for me to get out of myself is to get into you. One of the Buddhist monks said, very simply, if I want to be unhappy, I think about myself. If I want to be happy, I think about others. It's simple, but it's true, because when I'm in here and my ego is running the show, it's not pretty. And I do things that I'm not really pleased about. But if I'm not watching my thoughts, I am my thoughts. And so if I'm not paying attention to what my thinking is. And I never try to stop my thoughts. I never fight them because it does no good. And I just watch them, but I don't have to listen to them, and I don't have to do what they say. I have, a choice as long as I'm able to kind of maintain a place where I realize what they really are. And I've found some escapes from my ego, and those escape is one place, and that place is in the present moment, because the only place the ego, my ego at least, doesn't go is into the present moment. It's going to immediately try to pull me into the future, the past, current events. But when I can take a breath, when I can try to stay in this present moment, I know that's the only contact point to God. The only place I have any possibility of relationship with God is in the present moment. I can't find God in the past. I can't find God in the theoretic future. I have to find him now. And so that's where I have to keep my focus, because when I do, I'm relieved of the burden of ego for a little bit. And when I get into you, I'm relieved of the burden of ego for a little bit. And when I meditate, I sometimes can have a little bit of peace that allows me to see how screwed up my ego is. And Jung also said we spend our first, we spend the first half of our lives learning things, and then the last half of our life unlearning things. And that's where I'm at in terms of trying to find emotional sobriety, is by trying to unlearn the things that bring on, as he talks about, these demands, these unreasonable, these absolute dependencies. And I have had a lot go on. My father died in December. My mother, we moved her. She has Alzheimer's, or she has a dementia, and she fell, broke her neck, but wasn't discovered for 8 weeks later when she started becoming paralyzed. One of my dogs decided that he didn't like the little dogs. I have 5, a Doberman and 4 Yorkies. So that probably wasn't a good mix, but Doberman said, I don't like the little ones. And so I got an annual behaviorist. I had to find a new home for him. And my son, who had 4 years, relapsed just a few weeks ago. So, life happens, and that's okay. I've got to learn, how can I have that emotional sobriety? So I hope I'm not taking too long, but these are some of the tools that I use, because, to me, it talks about the spiritual toolbox, and I like to think of it as the spiritual tool belt, and I like to think of my side guy as that guy that comes to do the refrigerator, that has so many tools on his belt that his butt crack shows. I want my butt crack to show. I want enough tools that I'm always ready, because when these things, like when life happens like it does, I need those tools. I need more than one. And this program has afforded me those tools. And so, the things that I use, as I said, is number one, sticking close to the program and being able to have a sponsor that I can call and talk with, and sponsees that I can be honest with and I can talk with. I use the ability to, I do think that meditation, and mainly present moment mindfulness, is really, really important. I think, looking at what's really important to me, looking at those dependencies, looking at those demands, and realizing that I don't have to live like that. I have to give up some old ideas. And the old ideas that are most important to give up for me are, I know what's best for me. That's the first one that I hold on to, and my ego refuses to let go of, is how could you not know what's best for you? Well, I don't. I proved that by everything I did in the plan for getting what's best for me, brought me here on a Thursday night talking to a little camera. So that's okay. But I think there's a better way. And that's what it talks about. Instead of changing the plan, it's the plan of God is the manager. I'm just a worker. You know, he does the work. He gives me at plans and shows me where I need to go next because I'm there. That's how I know I'm supposed to be there. And I do what I think is best and most loving in that situation. And things seem to be better. You know, I don't know what's best for me. You know, I don't know how things are supposed to happen. You know, um, I when I first got sober, my sponsor Steve told me, "Hey, here, you know," he said, "Mike, you spend too much time uh, drinking was most of your time, so you need to find something else that you like to do." And he said, "Think of anything." Well, I really was into boxing, and I thought, you know what would be awesome is to be a fight doctor. Okay, the thought goes out there, and don't think anything more about it. And then about 2 months later, one of my nurse practitioners said, "Hey, I know somebody that's looking for a doctor to work fights at the uh, American Legion, just some Hispanic small fights. Sure, I'd love to do it." I said, yes, I went, did it, and, you know, did this for a couple of years. And if it stopped there, it'd be wonderful. But it just so happens that this was back when Mike Tyson was going to fight Lennox Lewis, and they got thrown out of Las Vegas and they got thrown out of Jersey, and it wound up landing in a little place called Tunica. And the only doctor who had any experience in terms of fights in Tennessee at that point was me. So the next thing I know, I'm standing ringside at one of the, you know, biggest fights of the times, and just being, how did I get here? But, you know, I don't try to say what comes next. One of the things I learned early on is it's only in chaos that infinite possibilities exist. And God to me is that sense of, once I define how it's supposed to be, a demand, once I say an expectation, I expect it to be like this. This is how it's supposed to happen. This is how I want it to be. Then I completely limit God, because I've taken away all avenues, which were infinite before, but now I've whittled them down to about 3 choices. And they better happen that way, because now it's not a desire, it's not a suggestion, it's not a wish, it's an expectation, you know? And when I don't do that, and I leave it to however it's supposed to be, I throw desires all the time, wishes, I set goals. I just don't have expectations on those goals. I do the work and I leave the outcome. And however it turns out is okay. I'm only responsible for the work, not the outcome. Remember, I'm not the manager anymore. So when I do that, a lot less stress, you know, and surrender is the key to me, to everything. I have to let go. You know, I have to, in order to have emotional sobriety, I have to have a means of releasing. And this surrender is a sign of strength, not of weakness. And it's hard because I don't want to let go. You know, I want to try to fix it. My ego doesn't want to give up anything to God. That is the worst defeat. And so I try to do as much as I can till finally pain, which is the touchstone of spiritual growth, comes around, and then I release it. I don't have to do it that way. I can release it before then, and it's fine. And it actually seems to work pretty well. I have found that feelings were a real hard thing. And recently, especially grief, sadness, loss, those come on me, and they're feelings. And so I'm supposed to feel them, but I try to suppress them. I try to force them down. And when I actually allow them to be, I don't push them away. You know, when I have grief, I know exactly what the boundaries and border of. I don't try to push it away. I feel it and I leave it be, and I let it be there as long as it wants to be. I don't try to cover it up. I don't try to shoot it away. It's not that pleasant. Well, what I have found, and this is not something I've learned, it's from other spiritual teachers, it dissipates. It will go away. And when I let it go away, it can be away. When I push it, shove it down, strangle it, repress it, suppress it, it's going to come back. So let those feelings for me come and sit with them and work with them and just let them there in the background. I just know it's there, and eventually it goes away. And I constantly surrender it to God. And when I am in situations that I'm not sure, I surrender. I surrender whenever I can, because I don't know what's best for me. And what I found is, to me, it's like I'm like a little kid who goes to his father and said, look at this toy, it's damaged and it's horrible and it's broken and the wheels won't break. And his father's like, okay, let me see it. But you don't understand. This one doesn't go over here and this is supposed to be over here. Well, just let me have it. Yeah, but you've got to know that that's me. When I talk to God, I've got to explain it all to him, how it's got to be fixed and needs to be fixed. And my God's just saying, give it to me. Let it go. I'm God. I can handle this. And so surrender, letting go, getting out of ego, staying in the present moment. These are things that I have found for me have been able to unload that dependency. The other thing I thought was interesting here was the Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm not debating him, but for me, Mr. Hyde is not going to come in control, and I don't think I'm going to convince Mr. Hyde anything, because Mr. Hyde to me is my shadow self. That's what Jung used, is everything that the ego thinks it's not supposed to be, but knows has to hang around. It shoves it in the corner, and eventually those aspects become their own self and power, and they can affect me. But when I accept myself totally, and that's what 6 and 7 and the prayer talks about, I need to accept myself wholly. I want to be made whole. And that's the union of my shadow self with my true myself that I have, that's in the light, so that I become whole. So I'm not going to really, for me, I'm not really going to try to, take Mr. Hyde and train him. I'm going to just try to bring him into the light and love him, because that's where I find wholeness. And it's in wholeness to me that emotional sobriety exists. So, I've talked for a while. I don't know how much this was helpful for anybody, but I have to get out of myself. I'm an alcoholic. The Chinese say that a man takes a drink, the drink takes a drink, the drink takes the man. My alcoholism is that drink taking a drink, and that doesn't go away. I don't think I have a solution to alcohol in terms of I'm never going to be able to drink again, but that's okay. By using these tools and by being able to remove those blocks, those dependencies, those my ego, I'm allowed some light, some sunlight of the spirit. I'm able to get that. And my belief is happiness and joy isn't something that comes to me. Happiness and joy is there all the time. It's in me. I am happiness and joy. It's all of these things, my mind most, and my ego and thoughts, that prevent me from having joy and ego. The way my mind and ego worked it is, I want that. Boy, I'd really like that. If I just had that, it would be wonderful. That would be wonderful if I just got that. I get that. And guess what? It moves out of the way and lets a little happiness and joy come up for a short period. And I'm like, oh, look, I got happiness and joy. And then it says, but really, I want that. Now I want that, that. The happiness and joy didn't come from anything outside. It was always in me. It's removing those things that block me from that source of happiness and joy, which is God, that keeps me away from or prevents me from having it. So spiritual growth is an inside job. If I'm disturbed, the spiritual axiom, there's something wrong with me. Yeah, what's wrong with me is I'm disturbed. So I am responsible, And that's what emotional sobriety is. The other point to me is responsibility. I'm responsible for my own sobriety. I'm responsible for my own emotional growth and my own spiritual growth. And it's an inside job. But there are tools that this program gives me that allows me to deal with these life setbacks, these things that happen. And I accept them as they are because they are reality. Most of my suffering comes from my inability to accept things as they are. And when I do, things can be dealt with. Okay, well, I think I've talked a long time. I don't know if any of that made sense, but I'm pretty happy saying it, so that's good.
I think you did great, man. That was beautiful. Thank you, Mike. So when was the time, or was there a certain point that you can pinpoint where you finally came convinced that that you didn't necessarily take seriously what you wanted anymore, that you didn't want what you wanted what God wanted for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, it happens all the time because I still think I want what I want. And I'm constantly proving to myself that this isn't where it's at. And my alcoholism, you know, when weekend time comes, my addiction says, whoa, you need something, you deserve something. That's you work really hard. Well, what do you deserve? What can I have? What do I want? What do I get? And when I hear myself saying that, that's when I say, well, you know, what about maybe not doing that? And what about, you know, instead spending that time in terms of working on myself and not necessarily having to look out at, not immediately going to the mall for something or whatever, or binge watching. I do all those things, but there are times that I'm able to say, you know, that's not what I want, where I say, in order for me to grow, I need to look at what's really important, and I need to see why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I break it down. And when I do that, it ruins the fun, because I'm like, okay, what I'm really doing here is going to these things to fill something that's never going to be filled by doing it. And so as long as I know that, and I'm aware of why I'm doing it, then I do it with that aspect and without expectations. And so some of the things I would normally do, I don't do, because they aren't going to give me what I originally thought I could get out of them.
Isn't it funny how do you remember when the money thing happened to you like that? I remember, like, it's so funny now that I look at it. I mean, there was a couple times where I thought, God, man, if I just had this behind me and I just had this much money, if I could just get to where I'd made X amount a year, and it would just be okay. And it's amazing how quickly your brain just gets used to it. You blow that away, and then the next thing you know, and it's amazing too. Like, I also do that with trips, like going somewhere, you know, like I think, God, I just need to get out of here. I just need to go to some clear water. I need to get out to the beach. I need to get out here. And the first thing that I always realize and recognize there is that my head is there. You know, like that peace, that delusion that when I get there, some kind of external thing is going to bring me this long, you know, sense of peace. It doesn't.
It doesn't, and it speeds up life. I mean, there's two movies that I love, and they're metaphysical, spiritual movies, but they're comedies. And one is Groundhog Day, because my life is that's a spiritual movie. Every day, everything is basically like it is most days, and I have a chance to slowly, and Bill Murray initially, he was out for what he could get. Every day he knew he was stuck there, so it's all about getting for him. How can I get this? How can I make this? And eventually, over time, what he realized is where he really found happiness and joy was, how can I use this knowledge of, you know, and improve my relations? How can I grow spiritually? How can I do those? And those are, you know, kind of summarized in the stuff he does. But that's true. I mean, life is Groundhog Day. You know, what you do is basically the same thing. So you can either berate that and be sad, or you can say, okay, this gives me, tomorrow I screwed up, and I do my accountability at night, and I tell where I was plus and minus, and I do my sum up. And then tomorrow, maybe I'll do a little better on this, and I'm going to make this a goal. And then it's exciting. I mean, then you've got, you got the next day to look forward to, because all you have to do is a little better than you did the day before. And the other movie is called Click, and that's what you were just talking about. Click is a movie of Adam Sandler where he finds this, he's given by this person who turns out to be the devil, well, I ruined it for everybody. Sorry, don't watch the movie. It's a remote control. And he says, look, life's kind of boring a lot of the time. This will allow you fast forward into only the best moments of your life. And so he loves it. He's clicking along, but not far, at a certain point, he realizes the real good moments were all those that he passed up, not the ones he was jumping to. And I do that with my life. If I don't watch it, I live, and when this happens, wait, and then on the weekend, I'm going to do that. And then when's my next vacation? And then when is the next good thing going to happen to me? It's happening right now. I'm alive. I'm breathing. I'm in the moment. I have a God that loves me. And I love my job. I get a chance to take care of people. And I get a chance to be of service, because it says I'm supposed to be fitting myself to be of maximum service. It doesn't say just alcoholics. It says maximum service. So, I get to do that. And I get to become part of people's lives, which is awesome. But you see, I get to see how crazy I am and everybody else. My favorite is I love, and a lot of you people see me, so you know how crazy I am. But I love it when someone comes in, and it's usually older guys, and they're like old like me, they're like 65, whatever, I'm 60, and they're like, well, Dr. Miller, this is this, and I'm feeling this, and this is going on, and that's happening, and that, and it's not supposed to be like that. And I have to say one of two things. Who said? And they go, what? I said, who told you that that's not the way it's supposed to be? Well, what? And the other thing I say when they say, this and this and this, and it shouldn't be like this. And I ask them, well, now how old are you? And they say, well, I'm 68. All right. And well, how many times have you been 68 before? And so how do you know how you're supposed to feel at 68? And I'm not a smart ass. I just want them to the reality and flush down that illusion that we all have, because what I tell them is like, you think you're probably supposed to be feeling like that guy in the pharmaceutical commercial that's an actor that has gray hair and life is great, and he dances along while they read the terrible effects of drugs in the background. How you think you're supposed to be and feel, because you just got scammed, because I am constantly being shown how I think I'm supposed to be. And the only person I need to be is the person that I know is my true self, and one that's going to be of maximum service, and the one that can get out of himself. But I see how screwed up we are in terms of our delusions that we've gained throughout time. And so, no wonder I drank. And so now I have a way where I can get that higher state where I can feel good, and I can be okay even when I don't feel good. And I can feel things, and I don't have to crush them and hide them and push them. I just feel them, and I let them eventually go away. And I didn't have that before. So more ranting on my part. I can't believe you guys put me on here to do that.
No, it's good. The funny thing is, like, it's not that money's a bad thing. I'm grateful for all the provision God gives me. It's not that vacations aren't great things, but for me, it was how I related to those things and what my expectations of them were. And then it's even more cool to see what sitting in a chair completely still and watching my breath and communion with God, how whole I can be with that. When I was looking, I can get on an airplane and travel 20 hours to try and experience that somewhere, do all these things and just, you know, reprioritize my life to get these things. And all of a sudden you go, well, that's what it is. That's what it gives you. So that's what it feels like to have a lot of money in the month. Like, I thought it was going to feel like something different. Like, I just got used to it pretty quick, or I just got used to this pretty quick. And I'm still irritable, and I'm still afraid, and I'm still discontented. And I think it's interesting when we do the meditation is such a big piece for me of how I look at my day and where that goes. So I really enjoyed your share. So what we usually do is we have you call on 2 people, just pick somebody, Hollywood Squares here. And then
let me get to the bigger screen. I had the smaller one going.
And then we'll open it up.
I'm going to spin it around and it lands on Eileen J. from Port Huron.
Take it away, Eileen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I was just about to click off my picture because I've got so much going on in my head right now with everything that you shared. But one of the things that you talked about that really spoke to me was you said, if I'm not watching my thoughts, I am my thoughts. And I think for me, I'm coming into this as a grateful member of Al-Anon and looking at how the program and coming into these rooms has helped me get to that point where I have that moment, that instant where I can take a step back and think, okay, this is just a feeling. Like you were saying, this is just an experience. This is going to pass. And having the opportunity then to make a choice on how I'm going to respond. And so often for me, it is about, like you were saying, these expectations and these delusions of how things are supposed to be. And that has been just such an amazing gift to be able to start making those choices for myself and looking at what is the bigger picture here and how can I let go of what my expectations are and actually see what the next right step is for me. And I think the biggest change for me has been coming in, and I came in from a very strictly religious background, thinking that I had to have all of the answers, had to have an answer for anybody that asked me anything. And if I figured that if I knew the verse and the chapter, that I could basically, I was safe at that point because I could give you an answer and I could basically shut down any discussion about God. And that was my safety. And in 15 years of being in these rooms and in this program, I have been able to come to the place where now I don't have to have the answers. In fact, my safety now is knowing that I don't know the answers and I don't have to. And the uncertainty is where the adventure comes in. And so looking at it not as a fight between safety and the unknown, but knowing that the unknown is where God is going to meet me. And that's where the joy, that's where the surprises, that's where the love comes in. It's just being able to let go of those expectations that I have for how things are supposed to be and just kind of sit back and think. It's almost like I'm a passenger on this ride and I don't have to be the one in control anymore. And it lets me enjoy the scenery so much more if I'm not the one who's constantly trying to figure out where the next turn is. So, but it was a fabulous share. I really appreciate it. And Sam, thank you so much. I got brought in by my brother, John O, and my sister, Maggie O. They both told me about this meeting and it's been just such a gift. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eileen. One of the other things I like is it's not the fear of the unknown. It's really, it's the loss of the known. Not the fear of the unknown. It's fear of losing the known. And that's what I deal with all the time. I do have choices. He made me do it. You made me mad. All of these things that I say is crazy when I listen to it. No one made me mad. I always have a choice to be mad or not be mad. But I live life reactionarily. You're going to say this, so I'm going to say that. Then I'm going to do this, then you're going to say that. It never has to be that way. I can always choose not to react like you think I'm going to react. Or how society says, whoa, you should probably be really this way now. I don't have to be that way. I have a choice. That's where true freedom lies. So thank you. How about Robbo?
Hi, I'm Robo. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Thank you for your share, Michael. That was great. You said a lot too, and so much of it resonated with me. I'm in the process of going through another fourth step too, and so what was fresh in my mind too, in recent experiences with, including yesterday with my teenage kids and everything. It's impossible for me to experience the now with all the expectations that I come with, and I've been sober from drugs and alcohol since 2003, but it never ceases to amaze me what slips through the cracks too, right? The stuff that I stuff down, and I have these expectations, and I don't beat myself up over it anymore as much as I used to, at least, and I can own my mistakes and own my feelings and acknowledge the expectations that I walked into the situation with too, and making amends promptly. And what's really been helping me a lot lately too is a lot of what you said seemed to really resonate with 10 and 11 and with steps 10 and 11 and just being able to inventory those things on a regular basis too, because I wasn't doing that for a while. So obviously things built up too, and I like the movie Bruce Almighty myself too, about playing God, right? And I assign these roles to everybody. They're not following the script and they don't even know it. And so I have to judge them and condemn them for it. All those subtle unconscious choices that I make along the way too, that just kind of rob the moment too, and steal from the happiness that could have been, and without lamenting or making a sob story out of any of that too. I can still be grateful for the lessons that I learn along the way too. And I'll share one last thing I'll share too, is because I was cutting up when you were talking about how you talk to some of your patients, because I'm 43 and I'm feeling like I'm 43. Not that long ago, I had some back pain and I went to my doctor sent me to an osteo bone doctor to take a look at me, and he reviewed my x-rays and my MRIs for a little bit, and he came back in and he said, "How old are you?" I went, this was a couple years ago. I think I was 41. I'm 41. He said, "I'm going to prescribe going for a walk at least twice a week. Can you do that?" I was like, but you don't understand. I shouldn't be feeling this way. My shoulder's really messed up. I want to talk about my shoulder, and not just my back. And he said, "You're okay." And that meant the world to me when I first came to AA 17 years ago too. Like, and it's been a progression too, from everything's going to be okay, right? I really needed to hear that when I got here, but the longer I'm sober and the more I journey on this walk with God and God's wonderful children like you and everybody here that's here tonight too, everything's okay. What if everything was okay? And I'm comforted by that thought too, and it puts me back into myself to really think about, to take that kind of inventory where in the moment, no matter what my mind's telling me about not having enough money at the end of the month or whatever's coming down the pike, right now I got food, I got shelter, I got people that love me, people that I can love, and all my needs have always been met, even in the worst moments of drunkenness and escapades that got me here, that earned my seat. But thanks for letting me share. I really appreciate your lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. You know, the problem of my alcoholism exists. The problem exists in my mind, but you know, I have to take it a step further. All problems only exist in the mind. Without mind, there is no problems. I mean, reality carries on. It's only when there is a mind that judges it and puts expectations and how interpretations of it that there's a problem. There are no problems outside of the mind, not just in an alcoholic, but in everybody. And that's something I have to always remember is, you know, problem is a relative term. When I lose $100 bill, that's a problem. I think if you're walking behind me and find $100 bill, it's not a problem. So I have to realize, you know, where problems exist, and they exist in the mind, because outside of the mind, there isn't such a thing as a problem. Who else would like to share? I'll just look for some hand that goes up.
Here, we'll pull it up.
You go ahead.
So we'll let
you
can go ahead and start
you
raising.
drive, Sam, you drive.
All right. Well, let's raise anybody want to share? Sometimes people just want to think after this, so you have to pick on them a little bit. So I think I'm going to pick on, what about Amy? My friend Amy K. I don't see, I think it's stuck.
Amy, you better start sharing. You are a patient, so I'm going to start slowly releasing secrets. HIPAA ones too, the big ones.
I think she got stuck. Her internet connection looks like it went down.
No,
we'll come back.
Okay, here's the first secret.
We'll come back to that. What about Derek? Derek, I hadn't seen you on here in a while. What's up, man? Good to see you.
Thanks, Sam. Good to see you. Thanks, Michael. That was great. You really said a lot of things. I can't possibly speak to all the things that resonated with me, but I like your analogy of the tool belt and the crack hanging out. But my problem is, I think half the time my whole ass is hanging out because I want everybody to see how many tools I actually have. And I fail to maybe pull one off the belt every now and then and use it, right? And sometimes that's because my meditation practice is waning, or I maybe not, stay in regular contact with my sponsor, or the 10th step. I mean, that's a perfect opportunity to stay in the now. You talked about, the only time that I can really, tap into spirit is right here, right now. And that's exactly what the 10th step is designed for. The language that's used for there is, we've entered the world of the spirit. My experience is the world of the spirit is right here, right now. And the directions are all about at once, quickly, immediately. And when I'm doing that, I really feel like I am in the now. I'm present. I'm not necessarily judging things as good or bad. And yet when I put that to the side and get lax with my 10th step, then, anthills become mountains, and little petty resentments wind up coming out sideways at my kids or somebody at work, or the grocery store attendant or whatever. And I have experiences doing both. And I think it's just in the recognition, at least, that I know where I'm at most given times, and how much opportunity there is for improvement. So I think, again, I'm glad to be here. Oftentimes I have a commitment that conflicts with this particular meeting, and I miss seeing you guys on a regular basis. And tonight they got pushed back by an hour. So I'm grateful. The other thing, real quick, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but, Fellowship of the Spirit registration has opened, and they are flooding in. So if you plan on coming in, there's a chance it will sell out. Right now, the limit is at 500 people. The Fellowship of the Spirit in Colorado, I should say. I think the limit's of 500 people. And I know many of you would like to get registered, so I would almost encourage you to do that soon. So that's all. Thanks.
Yeah. And that's the last weekend in July is when that happens in Estes Park, Colorado. It's awesome. If you haven't gone, do it.
I like what you said about, I like the fact in the book, it says, when it's speaking of God, it says, may you find him now. And I always have to remember that it's not a time, it's a place. You know, when it's instructing me, it's, you know, may you find him now. Not when, but where. There he is, right in the now. So I always think of that when it's being read.
So yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Dawn?
Hi, I'm Dawn, alcoholic. Thank you for sharing, Mike. I really appreciated listening. There were a couple of things that you said that, well, a lot of stuff you said stood out for me, but one of the things that's been the major hobbling demand that I've had that is really, I've had to really take a look at an old idea that was crippling is that I think I know what's best for me. And I also think I know what's best for you. And that old idea has caused me enough pain this past few months that I am like, I'm done. I'm done. You can do whatever you want to do. You can be whoever you want to be. And I have no clue what to do with my life. And one of the biggest, you know, I couple that with, and when we all get our stuff together, that's when it'll be okay. So there's always this destination thing that y'all were talking about, you know, that Sam mentioned. When I get to the beach and the sun's shining and the clouds are just at the right height in the sky, and that's when it's going to be good. And I have really had a significant awakening around that. And it has been so beneficial to my daily experience that it's like, it has been revolutionary in the way I've been feeling. It does not mean that, you know, my life is perfect, does not mean that it's the charmed existence that I wish that it would be, none of that. What it means is that I'm doing what it talks about in acceptance. I'm actually living in reality. Like, oh, well, today's the day. I wonder what's going to happen today. It's not, I'm not worried about, you know, when it gets perfect tomorrow. And it's been revolutionary for me. And I really appreciate the understanding. And I also love the fact that we can have profound shifts that are profound, that actually catapult us to the next frontier of our lives. And I think I've actually had that experience, and it's been really like promising for me. Like, I think, wow, this is, you know, I got a little bit of traction on that one. That was good. So the other thing that that I, you know, talk about, and I know that when I take a drink takes a drink, that I am truly powerless over that. That's one of the things that, you know, I learned somewhere along the line that was true. Because for the longest time, my drinking was just, you know, characterized by me being a party girl, you know. And the reality of it is I wasn't partying. I was being driven by the drink, taking a drink. And I had no idea that was true about me at the time. Let's see. The thing that I wanted to ask about is reading list. I hear a lot of stuff. Sometimes Sam will ask the question, what books do you recommend? And lastly,
I will tell you, you know, I've got libraries and stuff, but the thing that's been the most mind-blowing, and I've been doing this a while, is actually on audio, on Audible, Michael Singer, Untethered Soul, but which is awesome. But even better, he has 3 sets of lectures where that are, there's like a 1 through 4, 5 through 9, and 11, 12, 13. I have been listening, which I love listening to books. I've been listening to those for almost going on a year now. Anytime I get a chance in the car, I'm listening to those. And I've got like I've got a Lee Child's book that I've been dying to listen to, but I can't make myself listen to it because I have to go back to listen, because what he's saying is so mind-blowing, and it makes such perfect sense when I'm listening to it. But then when I'm not listening to it, it falls apart. even though I've listened to it for almost a year. So I would strongly recommend, if you want something that to me pragmatically explains why I do what I do non-alcoholically, which it doesn't undo that. It actually all fits together nicely. It's the series, Michael Singer's series, and there's 3 sets of them. The book that he does, which is also amazing, that started it, is called The Untethered Soul. He has another book that is amazing called The Surrender Experiment. And this is a man that when he was 20 realized, I'm just going to start saying yes to everything that happens. And so he literally surrendered all the time. And it documents and he details how his life went. And he was a hippie in Florida, in the Everglades, in down by the middle. And he and started this and built and kept building. It shows how he gets moved around, how something moves him around by just him saying, I'm going to let life move me around like I want. And he ended and sold a multi-million-dollar company. He developed the tech, the first medical records EMR and billing system by starting on a Radio Shack. He just picked up a Radio Shack computer and started playing on it, and then things came. But it's all about, if you let something, your higher power, God, lead you, it's not going to end bad, because I can either run life through a Mike's eye view or God's eye view. And I think I like it better, friends, from a God's eye view. The other thing I like is it says, my sponsor says this all the time. So, Steve, you've heard it, but it's great. He said he was in a meeting and everybody was, all right, keep coming back, keep coming back, it gets better. Keep coming back, it gets better. And finally, this old curmudgeonly patient or alcoholic screams, damn it, it gets bitter when it's okay just the way it is. And that's the truth. That's Steve. So I give him credit. So there's no plagiarism, which he's known for.
Beautiful. Amy, are you around? Is your thing? Would you like to share?
Me again?
Yeah, sorry about that. You just went black for a second.
Yeah, I got booted off. I had to come back in, but I didn't use it as an excuse to leave. I wanted to get right back here. I know, Mike, but this has been a fantastic experience, and I wanted to get back to that butt crack guy and the tool belt, because I think that when we first come around, we think, I don't need all those tools. I can manage this without any tools, and we don't want them. And then we think, if I stay around here long enough, I won't need the tools anymore. I will just figure out how to live. And for me, the goal is to be an acceptance of the fact that I'm not going to figure out how to live, and I'm always going to need the tools. That I should always be willing to run everything through prayer, run everything through my sponsor, keep doing the service. But it is just so odd how one of the ideas that I'm attached to is that one day I will have it all figured out and I won't need to be dependent on anything other than me. And so, butt crack guy, I guess I just have to be okay with that. One of the things I've had to do recently was I cut off a sponsee who won't go to meetings because I can't be her entire program, but she is just convinced that between me and her own brain, she can figure this out. So this has been tremendously exciting to listen to tonight, and I can't wait to go out and find Singer and his books and whatever it is, and hear more, because this is what I want. Thanks.
I've had so much fun with that, all those that you talked about with Singer and all those lectures and stuff. That was both those books are fantastic. And I started boxing a couple months ago for fitness, go to like title box. I mean, I'm not like taking punches, but I'm doing rounds and stuff like that. And I often find myself just dazed out later while I'm in there. And I can't remember, like, I spend minutes in my brain and I have to ask myself, I continue to ask this question, where are you? And I'm like, oh shit, I left. Like I just jumped on a thought and took it around, floated on it for a little while. It's like, where are you, man? Where are you? What are you doing? Like, where are you? And that's a great question to ask. Charles has his hand up. Charles?
Charlie, alcoholic.
Charlie.
Mike, I just enjoyed your talk. I also listened to a lot of books, and I just had to tell you about the one that was The Naked Now by Robert Rohr. I've been listening to that thing for 3 days now, just over and over, because it's just so powerful on how we need to train our minds to shut out the world and shut out what's going on in our lives, because it's meaningless. Even though we have to function, but is meaningless, because I want to say no, and then no interferes, and then I start putting all these expectations and my ego gets in the way. So if I say okay or yes, I'm not allowing that no to get involved, to start playing its different roles. And I think is pretty good. I mean, everything you talk about is stuff that I've been thinking about myself for the last, however long we've been doing this. It's been pretty good. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks. I've got Richard Rohr in my library / bathroom. So that's what I'm reading right now. And read books on the toilet. It's bad for you. That's what your doctor says.
Well, hey, Mike, we have 1 minute left. Do you have anything that you thought about that you'd like to add before we?
No, other than I just really enjoyed you all giving me opportunity to rattle on, because it forced me to try to get my thoughts together, which isn't the easiest thing to do, and to kind of solidify, what do I know about what I know? And I really like that. And I really like learning, and I love spiritual growth. And I know there's no end in sight. It's the one thing that I know I can never reach a pinnacle on. And the more I let go, the more it's a free fall. The more it's a free fall, the more it's an adventure. And I just have to keep surrendering and letting go. So thanks for letting me.
All right. Thank you. All right. Well, we usually mute ourselves and just go to our inner room. For all those who care to join us, we just quietly say to ourselves the Lord's Prayer. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you
Much
so
love to everyone.
much.
I just picked
Bye,
up my
everybody.
mom. I just picked up